In this class we're going to look at Mintzberg's 10 management roles and relate these to the role of the leader. So Mintzberg conducted research into the behavior of a group of managers and worked out from that research what the key management roles are. First of all, his observations identified 6 characteristics of managerial work, and we'll have a look at these now. So the characteristics are: managers are required to work under tight time constraints. Generally speaking, managers are under pressure to meet targets. Managerial activity is varied. It's fragmented and often pressurized. Some activities are not structured or scheduled, but still require efficient processing. Managerial work is varied. It's not just the key or the core process that must be delivered, but sometimes things go wrong, or sometimes there are special orders or special requirements, and these have got to be met in addition to meeting the core process as well, and they must be met within a certain time frame, so it's pressurized. And sometimes work is not structured, it's not properly scheduled, it comes in as a special requirement and the manager is expected to meet that requirement. Managers in general are interested in dealing with specific issues and current problems. Generally speaking, they're not interested in general issues, and they're certainly not interested in non-pressing problems. So they tend to focus on the problem in front of them, not look forward. That's to somebody else, that's to the leader, that's to the innovator. They're more concerned with the problem, the immediate problem. The manager is the main port of contact. They represent the business and interface with a network of other contacts, both internal and external. Well, managers have got that function. Managers need to be able to articulate company policy, both to the workforce and perhaps to anyone else who asks. They are in a position to be representative of the business, so they are a point of contact. They have a tendency to demonstrate a strong preference for spoken media. They prefer to talk rather than to write things down. Writing instructions down or writing requirements down takes time, and it's better to deal with things perhaps face to face and say what's required and pass on the instructions that way. So managers tend to deal in that format. Managers must focus on their specific remit. They must focus on what they are there specifically to do. And despite interruptions and pressures from work activities and the work environment, they must deal with the core of what they're supposed to do, the absolute essential of what they're supposed to do, even though they're getting interruptions from breakdowns on the production line or from special requirements from marketing or from senior management or whatever. They must still meet the specific requirements. Now, the managerial roles. Well, we can break these into under various headings. So we'll look at the managerial roles. Well, according to Mintzberg, he identified 10 roles that managements undertake when performing their work activities. 10 roles are further grouped according to 3 major classifications. There's the interpersonal roles, figurehead, leader, liaison. Informational roles, which are the monitor, the disseminator, somebody who passes out information, and the spokesperson. And also we have the decision roles. These are the entrepreneur, the disturbance handler, when something goes wrong, handle the disturbance, handle the issue. The resource allocator, somebody who can efficiently use the resources that are available. And the negotiator, when something goes wrong in the workforce, between the workforce and management, or even between a supplier and the business. Okay, so how managers effectively interact with other people. That is the interpersonal role. Now, the figurehead. Well, the figurehead represents the organization to the outside world. The manager becomes seen as the spokesperson for the business. This, of course, is in the absence of a specialized department, a specialized public relations department who perhaps takes more of a role. But for many businesses, it will be the managers who have to represent the business to the outside world. The figurehead is in charge of competing social, inspirational, legal and ceremonial duties. So the figurehead is the one who is seen as almost the personification of the business. This is the person who leads ceremonial roles, who might sponsor a school activity or some sort of social function or whatever. This is the one who will appear and be seen as representing the business. And the figurehead must be always available to deal with people and agencies. The figurehead must be generally available. And the figurehead has got status and authority by virtue of who he or she is. As a figurehead, they must have status. If they're going to represent the business to the outside world, there must be somebody within the business and somebody senior within the business. And they must have authority to speak on behalf of the business. The next role is the leader. And this is really why I've included this video within leadership. The leader is responsible for hiring, training, motivating, evaluating and supervising subordinates, supervising workers. Those are really the key functions of the leader. The leader creates the structure and environment in which the subordinates work and are motivated. So the leader is somebody who sets up the whole structure and engineers the structure in a way that the workforce are motivated to deliver efficiently the output that is required. And the leader observes and monitors activities. He or she encourages employees, provides prospects for career progression and promotes and also disciplines workers for transgressing or breaking the rules. So the leader is very important in that context. And the leader aims to balance subordinates and organizational needs to allow efficient operations. Workers have requirements. Requirements not to be worked too hard. Requirements to have time off. Requirements to have a good working environment. And the organisation has needs to get the output through. So there is a balance to be struck. But the leader clearly has to meet legal requirements and make sure there is minimum standards so that the employees are safe and have a decent working environment. Another function of management is to liaise, is to to speak to and communicate between different parts. So is responsible for maintaining good relationships outside the organisation. That's key. The organisation must be seen as a good organisation. There is a sort of a corporate social responsibility on the organisation to ensure that it's acting in the best manner of the community. It's projecting itself in a positive light as well. The manager must supply and use information and communicate that, and be seen as the centre for holding the information and the centre for communicating it. And it's important to have networking skills in order to build relationships. So the manager must be able to network with other managers, with the workers, with senior management, or even with suppliers or other stakeholders, and be able to hold the information and communicate it when it's required. It's vital for information exchange. It provides access to databases or facts or requirements. So it's the manager who knows where the information is. When queried about a certain piece of information, the manager can access the database and bring up the information and produce it. So it's liaising. It's liaising with the various stakeholders who have requirements and being able to satisfy the requirements through having the information and facilitating its exchange. Next, there's an information role. The exchange and processing of information, which is essential. It's the manager receives data from the production process or from the various departments and processes the information to ensure that it can be used at the next stage and it is useful. It becomes information that is useful to the organisation and passed on. Yet another function of management is to monitor. Management responsibility is to collect, analyse information, data from external sources and also within the organisation in order to evaluate performance, well-being and the company's current situation. So the manager collects the information, he or she analyses the information and collects the information from all the relevant sources, external and internal, and tries to evaluate the performance of that particular department or function, or of the whole organisation indeed, and thereby evaluate the company's current position. So it's an important function. Undertaking necessary procedures such as internal operations, external events, ideas, analysis and pressures are important in helping an organisation implement change, solve problems, develop opportunities and to make appropriate decisions about the organisation. So this monitoring process is very important. This is how benchmarking can happen. The manager receives all of the information from all of those various sources, tries to make sense of it, and then tries to see how that function, that department, or even the organisation is performing, say, vis-a-vis the same time the previous year, or last month, or the last quarter, or seeing how it's performing against a similar organisation if that information is available. The manager must have viable information and a good information system which involves building contacts and training staff to deliver the information. The information just doesn't go to the manager. It must be collected. It must be verified. It must be checked. It must be accurate, because that could lead to bad decisions if it wasn't. So there must be staff training, junior to the leader or to the manager, staff training that's going to feed the information for effective analysis and monitoring. The next one is the disseminator. It involved with sharing information to other staff within the organization. You're passing information out. Perhaps not all the information, because some of it may be privileged or secretive, but perhaps other people need information to do certain tasks. They need information about some aspect of the business. So that information has to flow, and it's best to flow from one person. The manager translates the information to subordinates, to the workers. For example, policies, rules, regulations, and values. Now this must be communicated. There's no point in having a policy if nobody knows about it. No point in having a rule if nobody knows about it. So it must be communicated. It must be disseminated throughout the organization. The information is then regarded as important, or what the company believe or value, and how they can make a difference to the organization. So having policies, rules, regulations and values, these must be communicated. They must be spread throughout the organization. It must be widely understood, and it's the function of the manager to make sure that these are understood. However, sharing information is time consuming and difficult to arrange, as staff may be busy with other activities. So it's a question of finding time, slotting it in. It's very important, but at the same time everything can't stop just for that. In bigger organizations, of course, there may be training days, and the HR section may be involved in disseminating the information right across the organization. In some organizations, in some smaller ones, it's for perhaps the departmental manager to communicate, but the manager is time pressed to make sure that the throughput of the department does not suffer because he or she has had to stop it so that information could be passed on to the workers. It's a balancing act. Next, the manager is a spokesperson. Is responsible for circulating information to internal and external sources, such as key influencers and stakeholders. So it's best if information comes from one person. If it comes from a variety of people, contradictions and ambiguities can arise. So coming from one person is the best tactic. These sources are kept informed of performance, current plans and policies. So the spokesperson, the manager, is capable of delivering this in a way that is understandable to them. It's coming from one source. There's no contradiction because it's been delivered by one person. For external sources, the manager is the key person to consult, as he or she is an expert in the field and in this particular organization. So external sources certainly want to go to one manager. If they go to a variety of managers, they may get contradicting ideas or reports, and of course the organization would not want that to go outside the organization. So generally speaking, top management will control the flow of information going out. The manager is also in charge of the strategy making process. Therefore, it's important for him or her to make appropriate links with outside parties. Top management is actually responsible for the strategy making process, but managers feed into this, and it depends on the level on which the manager we're considering here operates. Junior managers may still make a contribution, but of course they would not be representing the business to the outside world. But senior managers will certainly be involved in the strategy making process, and they will be in a better position to brief workers and perhaps also to put out press statements and to ensure the accuracy of the press statements, or make sure the statements accurately reflect what is wanted to be put out. The manager has authority for information and capacity for control over important decisions. Now, decisional roles, as this is the manager's ability to make decisions. And here we could list something like the entrepreneur has the capacity to innovate, initiates change, and is involved with designing new products. This is a key function within any business. If we don't have the entrepreneur, we don't get new products. We'd have the same products in perpetuity. So it's the entrepreneur who leads to change and to innovation. And the manager, qua entrepreneur, the manager acting as the entrepreneur, is also in charge of controlled change within the organization. Any flaws or gaps that can be improved are identified, improvement programs are developed. So the entrepreneur is this function of the manager as a sort of an internal entrepreneur, looking for innovation and change and improvements. We'll also look at the existing system for any problems and try to solve those problems creatively. The manager has the power to allocate responsibility to reliable subordinates and also supervise and support subordinates. So even though they are being creative and innovative, they may delegate some of this, some of the practical end of it, to other people, and then supervise them to make sure that it's followed through. So managers operating as entrepreneurs. As for disturbance handlers, well, this is when there is conflict within the organization and the manager is able to resolve it through negotiations or through talking, through trying to find an equitable solution so that all are happy. The disturbance handler can also takes charge when the organization encounters unexpected changes. It's not just conflict within the organization, but there might be unexpected changes. For example, suppliers no longer supply the raw materials, or a component is a delivery of components doesn't fit or is of no use in the production process. These are all disturbances, something which will influence the flow of output, and it's the manager who has to step in and try and solve this problem, solve it locally. Reasons for the disturbance may occur due to staff or resources, or threats, or staff mistakes. Sometimes people make mistakes which can lead to a disturbance. The management role here involves working on their own initiative, resolving the matter, evaluate and take corrective action. So as far as possible, the manager can deal with it locally, deal with it at that point. So the rest of the organization can continue to function normally. The disturbance is in one department perhaps. The management is able to deal with it in that department. That is a disturbance handler function. As a resource allocator, well, the management allocates resources including money, staff, materials and time. They are probably budget holders, so they have the facility to allocate resources. They also, of course, schedule time and program the work. This means that they're able to work out what is efficient within that department and schedule and program the work accordingly. And having done that, of course, they can authorize the action to be taken to ensure that the work is done. Managers have the ability to make models and plans in order to evaluate processes. So the managers can conceptualize the whole thing, perhaps sketch it out on a piece of paper, and then go about implementing it, working out the schedules and the programming of work, and making sure the right people are in the right places and the machines are properly geared up to ensure continuous and smooth production. As a negotiator, the manager has the role is linked to that of the spokesperson, the figurehead, and the resource allocation roles. So it's the negotiator is a little of all of those. It's the spokesperson, the figurehead, and the resource allocator. It encourages important negotiating activities with other parties and organizations. It's not necessarily conflict. It could be conflict, resolving conflict, disturbance, or it could be negotiating delivery schedules from a supplier, or negotiating components and how components are not just delivered, but the sequencing of the production, the design changes perhaps that are necessary. There are lots of ways in which the negotiator could be involved. The aim of the role is to secure resources and the arrangement of favourable conditions from others in order for success. So that's what drives the negotiations on one side. Of course, the other side to the negotiations will have similar objectives, and common ground has to be found. Compromise has to be found which suit both parties. Otherwise, the negotiations would fail and there would be major problems. There's a generalist and a specialist management function. Well, Mintzberg identified that management needs both organization generalists and specialists. Operational imperfections and environment pressures. Well, the disturbance of basic routines, these functions, operational imperfections and environmental pressures, you might need somebody quite general to handle that. But when the goods or the imperfections or the environmental pressures come to impact on specific departments, then a specialist might be required. So the generalist is the one who deals with the organization as a whole, the much wider picture, and the specialist is much more focused. Disturbance in basic routines, well, that normally is a specialist, somebody who can deal with something basic and something which is specific. The generalist is more an overview and dealing with the overview. The organizational generalist could also look at the problems of individual managers. I mean, there is a pecking order within the business. Managers themselves have to be monitored. And if a manager is not performing very well, then a generalist, perhaps from the HR department, might be involved. According to Mintzberg, the role of management is demanding. And as you can see from the 10 points that we've made under the various headings that we've looked, there is quite a big role for the manager within organizations, one of which of course is that of leader, and allied to leader would be the entrepreneur. But these are functions that may be seen associated with managers. It may be the case that in some organizations managers are inappropriate to be the entrepreneurs. Perhaps the entrepreneurs are the free thinkers, the ones who experiment, the ones who perhaps need the freedom to experiment and to be creative. Perhaps a research and development department. So it gives us an insight into the complexity of the roles that managers take on. And I think in that sense it is useful. It's worth, when you're dealing with this, to rewind it a couple of times, stop the video from time to time, make some notes, study what's on the screen, think about it, and see what sort of reduction in the notes you can make to see if you can make those 10 points clearer for you. Okay, so I think that concludes this video. So thank you for watching.